Okay, so I've got here these are some old demonstrations, tools that I've drawn and started shading. Just want to show you guys. The shading part is probably the hardest part for a lot of people. They just don't know where to start, or, how do I know when it needs to be light and when it needs to be dark? So I get a lot of those questions. So I wanted to show you guys some of these. For those of you that have these plier-like tools, like this one right here. Try to zoom in on this. Now what I would do, and this is how we started off the other day, I would start by just sort of starting to shade the handles. Because I feel like the handles are the easier part of that tool to start with. And it's always nice to kind of start with an easy part just to get your feet wet. So when you look at this, first thing you need to do is you need to figure out where is your light coming from. On this particular tool drawing that I did, you can tell that the light is coming from the right side. That's why the right side of the handle is the lightest. And then you'll notice that when it gets to the middle, it starts to get darker. And the darkest part will be over here on the very left side. The other handle is going to be treated the same way as this one, because again, light is coming from this right side and it's going to hit the right side of the handle. It'll start getting darker again at that form change as that form comes up, and then as it goes back and around away from the light source, it's going to get darker. So the biggest thing for you to do is to always figure out first, where is your light coming from? Now if it helps, if you want to, you can draw very lightly on your paper, and you want to do it lightly because we certainly don't want to keep this on here. You can draw like a cute little sun on the side of where your light source is, and that can sort of act as a constant reminder for you as to where that light is coming from, at least what side it is, okay? So that's basically what you want to do first, is just figure out where's your light come from, because it's going to hit everything on the right, the strongest, and then as it goes away from the light source, it's going to get darker. And then again, you want to remember that for every form change, there's going to be a big, drastic value change. So, this is the top of the tool right here, and this is the side. Because this is the top, the light's going to hit it differently than the side. This side right here is completely blocked away from the lights. So that's why it's going to get really dark. So you kind of have to think about the sun almost like laser beams, Where is it going to hit first? Okay, so that's that. And I'm going to show you this one too, for you plier people. This one's got a little bit more done to it. Again, handles, if you guys look here, the light's coming from the right side. That's why it's lightest over here on the right. When it gets to the middle of the handle, the form starts to change. It starts to get darker. Darkest on the left side because this side is completely blocked away from the light. And you can see that I'm addressing that stuff here also too. Again, lightest on the right, and then as it gets to the side, that side right there is completely blocked away from the light. That's kind of hard to see a little bit. And in general, on these pieces, and you can even see on this tool, even though it's not the same tool, I don't know if I can get these both in the same, there we go. So if you look, like some of this metal is just plain old darker. So it's really shiny and glossy here on the top, and it's darker here on the bottom. That's why I treated those that way. Okay? All right, so wrench people, I'm going to talk about you and show you some examples. So, I got an example here. Let me zoom back out a little bit. Actually, I'll put it, I need to go this way. There we go. All right, so wrench people, again, same thing. Now, because your metal is really shiny, you're going to find that a lot of this is you're going to see the shadows and the values actually have specific shapes to them, and it's almost going to look like one of those paint by number kits that you can get. And that's what's going to make things look really, really metallic-like. So you want to remember, again, for every form change, there's going to be an equal value change, okay? So we all have on the wrenches this sort of ridge right here, sort of this border around the tool. That is a form change. It's kind of rounded right there. Again, this is low, that's high, this is low. So every time that changes, the value is going to be different. So a lot of times in these low areas, you're going to find that the value, it tends to be darker. And as that form pops up, it's going to catch the light because, again, that light is hitting anything that's kind of popping up or, popping up. So it's going to get that light, okay? And you can see here even on this, like, the gear. I'll zoom in on this. On the gear here, the parts that are popping up are going to hit the light a lot of times, and these lower areas are going to get darker as they go farther away from the light source. And it's going to get darker, deeper into these recesses because, again, the light can't get to it. When you have things like this right here in the top of the tool, there's a big form change that happens. Everybody on their wrench has this angle right here that kind of pops up. So this is higher and this is lower. And you can even see as it is right now on the screen, even though it's kind of projecting poorly, you can see how bright it is up here and then how it gets so much darker under here. And that's why you see that edge. I'm not going to have like a line. I'm not going to put an outline there to show that edge. I'm going to show that edge because I have two different values there. There'll be one value here and a different value below that line. And that's how you're going to see that, okay? Same thing with like when you go from the top to the side. Again, that's a form change. The top is going to be one value. The side's going to be something completely different because the light's hitting it differently, okay? So what I'm going to do, because I feel like I didn't really get very far on my demo with the wrench on how to start that, I'm going to go back to my wrench and start showing that. Let me see, I think I've got another example. Now I got to start here. These are all a lot of starts on wrenches and tools. It's kind of hard to focus. See here. You can see how I'm starting this stuff. Now, of course, this is on gray paper. This is a different kind of paper, so I also have some white charcoal on there. You guys will not need white charcoal because you have white paper. So I'll zoom into there. So yeah, okay. So I'm going to start working on the wrench. Now, for those of you who are working on the pliers, keep working on your handles, okay? You've got two handles there, so work on those. If you're feeling pretty confident, you can go ahead and start going up into the kind of metal part of your tool. But again, what I would do is I would just spend time on one part. So if this was me, and I was going to start up here, I would just work on this area right here, this piece. And I'd work on that for a while, get that in a good place. And then maybe perhaps I'd go up here and I would just work on the bolt. You don't want to go through and try to do everything because when you do that, you do tend to look at it more like a coloring book than you would like a full-scale shaded drawing, okay? So just kind of pick parts and just work on this. If I was doing this up here, I'd just spend time on just this top part, work on that for a while, and then maybe this other section right here, and then I would treat this, again, kind of on its own separately, okay? All right, so get back to the wrench. I'm going to kind of zoom into this. I'm going to just kind of work on the bottom and work my way up, okay? I'm going to zoom in on this. I'm going to have to lower this. Sorry for all the focusing problems. Epson has a hard time focusing when the lights are off. You want to make sure, again, that you have your pencils, and I would put them in your hand in order from lightest to darkest. Okay, so 4H would be your lightest. 4H is your lightest. 3B is next. This is kind of hard to see. And then 6B last. Okay. Now, I don't necessarily always start with my 4H. But I am going to kind of fill in this area in here, this inner part. So again, I'm going to treat this kind of on its own. I'm going to ignore the text for right now. That's going to be a demonstration for tomorrow. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of, when I look at mine, there's nothing really light in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put a thin layer of 4H over the whole thing. Now you want to make sure before you guys start that all your guidelines are completely erased and gone. You don't want to leave those. Mine are still kind of there because, again, I did my drawing pretty dark. So, as a result, they're still there even after I erase. So, I'm just going to kind of shade around the lettering. I'm going to temporarily ignore this lettering for now. Again, that'll be a demonstration for another day. And I'm going ahead and filling in this whole inner area because for me, when I look at my tool, I don't see anything light inside of this area. So that tells me I need at least a layer of 4H or more. And just to kind of get it started, I'm going to put 4H down. So if you see something similar, you guys can do the same thing. But if you see areas inside of here that are really light, like so light that they look white, then you need to work around those areas and leave them white. So just work around them. Leave the white of the paper showing. I'm going to go ahead and turn my paper. It just makes it a little bit easier to kind of fill this area in. Again, make sure you have your scrap piece of paper handy, guys, so that you can create that nice shaded edge. Again, you can see why it's a bad thing to make all your guidelines in your drawing dark with pencil. You can't erase it. So I'm going to be fighting that stuff for a while. Now again, our goal is to get pretty far on shading the tool today. Again, you don't have to wait for me, so if you're feeling pretty confident about what you need to do, you can keep moving on. So you can feel free to just kind of peep your head or poke your head up and look at what I'm doing whenever you feel like you need a little refresher. But at this point, you guys can kind of work on your own. I'm just going to work on this in case you just want to kind of see how I'm approaching areas. So I've got that filled in. Now I'm going to go through and I'm just going to plug in my darker values. I do notice that around this inside edge here it does get quite a bit darker, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of work on that. And that will help this sort of like rounded border to pop up. So I'm going with my 3B. And again, my values don't necessarily always blend out. So in some situations I see a shadow and it has a very specific sharp shape to it. I'm going to keep that. So basically, you know, I'm just copying what I see. See kind of a ridge here. So again, I'm just kind of looking for a little moments here to just capture shapes to plug in. I see a shape up here I'm going to plug in and get in. Again, it's kind of like a paint by number approach almost. And you should see, once you start kind of adding more values down, you should see the form starting to pop out around. I see sort of the same kind of like rim here too. a lot thinner. Now, although this might look like an outline, it's not. This is not something that goes fast, guys. Not fast at all. So I'm just going to keep building this up. Again, looking at my tool, that's where the answers are, not on my paper. The answers are in front of me. And then, you know, anytime I need to make something really dark, I go in with the 6B and plug that in. So you can kind of see how I'm getting this to look like it's popping up and this is down. Feel free also too, guys, if you need to sharpen your pencils, you can get up at any time to do that. Now that we're shading kind of full time here, they will get kind of dull very quickly. So I think I've got a good start on this part, so I'm just going to kind of leave it alone until I need to go in later. I'm not going to probably know how to finish this area off until I just keep going. I'm going to go ahead and, let's see here, I'm going to go ahead and work on, let's see here, I need to work on some of this more. Again, I'm leaving the areas that need to look like they're highlighted, like the brightest areas. I'm going to leave those white, but not every area needs to be white. If you're finding you're having a hard time just getting things to look like they are blended together, if that's what your objective is, remember it doesn't always happen. 4H pencil is a nice tool to use. I actually like to use it as like a blending stick a lot of times. Blending sticks I don't like just because I think they smear the media too much, whereas the pencil keeps the structure better. And again, I'm just kind of looking at the shapes that these values are making. That's where I'm getting my info. Okay, keep moving on. So sometimes, like when I'm looking at this stuff, it is confusing, so sometimes it just takes some time to just kind of study what it is that you're looking at. So if you have to sit there and stare at your tool for about 2 minutes or 5 minutes, so be it. So what I noticed on this part, I've got kind of like a dark strip that goes all the way up here. So I'm plugging that in right now. Now I have more than one light source on my tool, just making this a challenge. Now I'm kind of addressing the side. Again, I'm just kind of working one section at a time. Right now I'm just kind of addressing the side of the tool. I'm going to go ahead and erase. I never erased over this stuff, so. So just keep working, guys. Again, your goal is to get quite a bit done today. It's a full work day. You want to get to the point where you can see sort of the end in sight. Tomorrow I'm going to show you guys how to shade in your text and cast shadow if you do want to include that in your drawing. I will say, too, a pencil eraser does come in handy in some of this stuff. Got a little too dark there. so that's getting somewhere. Alright, so I'm going to switch to the pliers. Just so you guys know, in case you ever want to see any of these examples, I have a bunch of them basically magnet clipped up onto this green door next to me. So you're more than welcome to come over at any time. Some of these also have several different ones in one clip. So feel free to come over and you can take a look at them, grab them, whatever. Alright, so I'm going to, for this one, I'm going to keep kind of going up and dealing with like just how to deal with the metal. I need to get my pencil set back up here again. Again, just remember every form change has a value change. You got to figure out where your light's coming from. My light is a bit wacky over here in the sense that I have two different light sources, so the middle of my tool is the lightest on these handles. Most likely you guys are going to see your tool either lightest on the right side or the left side. So I gotta make sure the outside of this is pretty dark. Alright, so I'm going to start right here. Again, I'm just going to work on this section right here. The metal in general on my tool, it seems like I have like, this is going to be maybe hard to show. I have some metal that's like really shiny and almost a lighter gray, and then I have some metal that's not shiny, was not polished, and is really a much darker gray. So this section that I'm going to work on right now is the darker, less shiny parts. So again, because I know that there's going to be nothing left white there, I'm going to go ahead and just fill this whole area with a layer of 4H. Just to kind of get it started, a base, so to speak, because again, I know nothing is going to be white here. And again, I'm just working on this one section. I wouldn't be taking this up into here because this is a different section, so just work on one section at a time. It really will help you guys keep everything intact and keep the structure of your tool. So shade one section at a time. Because it's pretty dark on this section, I'm going to go ahead and just there. So again, I'm just working on the top. I can see the side of this section. I'm not dealing with that yet. I'm just dealing with the top. And now I'm going to go with my 3B. And start building it up where it needs to be darker. And again, everybody's tool is a little different, so pay attention to what your tool is telling you. And since, you know, everybody's got a different tool here, we've got different things going on. So you're not necessarily copying what I'm doing, because my tool's different and my lighting's different also too. You got to do what you see. Now I do see this sort of like grade 8 out. Again, that doesn't always happen You're not going to always see your values gradually transition, which is gradation, into each other. Again, this is a pretty dark piece right here. I'm going to go ahead. I need to add 3 or 6B in here because this has got some parts in it that are pretty dark. You'll notice that you're probably going to get a lot of use out of your 3B pencil. So 3B pencil will probably get the most use out of everything that you have. Now I do see some kind of patchiness on this metal. It's not, again, it wasn't polished or sort of evened up. So I'm going to go in now and kind of add in some of that patchiness that I see, the dark spots that I see on the metal. I'm going to add that in there just to make it feel a little bit more authentic. And again, these are spots, so they're not going to be, you know, nice and smooth or anything like that. It's going to be spotty. So, added some of those spots that I see. Now that I've got what I feel like is a good start on this part, I'm going to go ahead and address the side. I do see a small sliver, literally a very small sliver of white that needs to stay there. So I'm going to avoid that area. It's right here at the edge, and hopefully I can keep that white. So whenever I start a new area, I'm going to just kind of look at that area at first and just ask myself, what do I see? I'm looking for where my lightest areas are because that's where I don't want to shade. So if I know where I don't need to go, then that shows me where I do need to go. Just working on this, trying to keep that white little highlight there intact. Now if you by any chance, if I lose that, I can maybe go back through with a pencil eraser and try to pull that back out. Those pink erasers are just too big. Wouldn't work. So, there. Now I'm going to go ahead and just try to finish up this top part of my handle. Because I kind of avoided it because I didn't know what I needed to do. But now that I have this section on here, I can kind of figure it out. Looks a little lighter up there. Again, I know that for every form change there needs to be a value change. So something's going in and around something, there should be something happening right there. Okay, so I'm going to just keep going. I'm now up here on this section. I'm going to go ahead and do this bolt because it's a small section, and it's kind of like a safe place to start. So I'm going to do that first. And again, when I look at a new area before I start it, I kind of study it a little bit. Got to figure out where my white is, if there is any, and there is on here. Kind of like a shape that goes, it's a very specific shape. So I'm going to go ahead and draw what that highlight, the shape of it should be, just to make sure that I include it. And then I'm just going to start working on it. My hope is that that shape that I drew on there for the highlight disappears. And again, because this is metal, I see some of these values making specific shapes, so I want to kind of pay attention to that. Again, some of these shadows blend out and some do not. Zoom into this part if I can. Nope, not gonna let me. So again, I'm just paying attention to the shapes that I see. You can just see how much time I'm spending on this bolt. It's just a small section of my drawing, but I'm spending quite a bit of time on it because I just see a lot of shapes on it. I want to make sure I get them on there. Got the bolt. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next easiest part that I think. This kind of hole right here in the tool. And then you kind of fix up the drawing a little bit before I move on. Now this area in here for me is just really super dark. It's just because it's a cutout, light can't get to it. So I'm probably going to start this area because it's so dark with a 3B. So in areas like this that do have a lot of darks in it, I can kind of skip my 4H and go straight to 3B. And even too with this is pretty dark. So you're going to see how much time I spent just on those two things. I can keep going. Like I'll go and probably work on this section, then that section, then this section, and then the teeth, and then I can wait till this whole side I can do later. So again, start a new section. I study it for a little bit, ask myself what is it that I exactly see. I'm looking for areas that need to stay white. If I do have areas that need to stay white, then I'm going to ignore them. Otherwise, if I don't, then I can just go ahead and start, like on this area there's no white, I'm just going to go ahead and start with a thin layer of 4H. Alright, so I'm going to walk around and kind of see what you guys are doing, answer any questions you have, but hopefully I gave you enough here that you can get going on this. Again, a lot of, it's hard because everybody's got a different tool and everybody's got different lighting, so, you can't necessarily look at mine and see what you need to do to yours. The answer is actually in front of you on that easel, so you need to look at what you've got. And just, be very honest with yourself about what you're looking at, what you see. Something looks like it needs to be dark, then it probably needs to be dark. Look for those white areas or those highlights. Those are going to stay white. But just work one section at a time. Don't try to shade the whole tool all at once. This is not a coloring book. So just deal with, like, the bottom part of the handle, or this little small section of your tool, or just the opening of the wrench, or just that bolt of the wrench, or just the top part of here. The more you kind of focus on just small areas at one time, the more detail you're going to be more apt to put in, and the better off it's going to look in the end anyways. So I'll leave those up there so you guys can see that.